again, it's Paul from SIA. Today I am with Andy from Snow Camps Europe, who's going to be joining me for this new extended series discussing everything ski, and I should say board related, anything to do with the ski industry as well. You look a bit out of your depth when I said that, Andy.
Well, nobody mentioned boarding, but we'll give it a go. It can't be that hard, can it?
Exactly, it can't be that hard. So yeah, we'll tackle every subject, and for you lot, if there's some questions you have or something you want to discuss, then you can always pop it down in the comments below. This podcast is also a vlogcast, so you can find it on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, etc. So Andy, how are you?
Good, thank you. All good, yeah. Enjoying the powder that we've got at the moment, and excited about the new podcast.
Yeah, excited about that and the massive amount of rest we've had. Well, I'm saying rest. It's I've never worked so hard for nothing.
Exactly. Yeah. Constantly trying to get content out and think of things to talk about without actually being able to teach anybody to ski. Yeah.
Well, in my case, obviously with SIA, it's basically that logistics of going through the organisation of courses that are then suspended, cancelled, rebooked, and etc. The mass amounts of refunds of putting all the money back into people's pockets again, and it goes on and on and on. So at this stage, we're into the end of March now. We're looking at the summer courses, and we have great news for those that want to do a summer ski course. It looks like Argentina is going to be the only option, probably, for what people can do. After discussing it with friends of ours from Rookie Academy in New Zealand, we can clearly see that they're not going to be opening up their borders for the summer season to international guests, and therefore it's going to be limited as to what we can do. And that brings us to our subject, really, because we are discussing today the effects of the pandemic on the ski industry. And when we say ski, we are always talking board, by the way. It's just like when we say men and women, people often say men, and then it just makes it a very long, strung out sentence to say board. So the ski industry, and of course the effects of how that is on ski instructor courses and ski instructors in general as well. How have you found it, Andy?
Mixed, let's say. I've found it very frustrating that I've not been able to work. Obviously, I was all geared up to start in November with the ski teacher courses, and then had a lot of bookings for the winter, as you guys did. And yeah, everything obviously disappeared when they told us we weren't going to open. And then since then, it's kind of been a very mixed winter of I've skied, but I haven't skied as much as I would. Therefore, I've lost fitness, and there's been loads of knock-on effects. And obviously, financially, it's not ideal not to have worked for most of the year. So yeah, it's been very strange and very difficult. But yeah, let's just hope we can get it moving forward as soon as we possibly can.
Yeah, I think obviously, putting things into perspective, and this is where it's a sensitive area, and why the likes of I know Abby Butcher from the Daily Telegraph was talking about the mental health issues to do with it, but also from the point of view of that some people are sensitive to the fact, why do you actually really give about skiing when there's a pandemic going on? Is that not a bit selfish? And from the other side, obviously those that want to continue living their life and see the pandemic from a different perspective, as we see from these demonstrations, etc., that there's different viewpoints here. And it is a sensitive area, because should we all, sit at home and be sad and wait for 18 months for this to pass? Or should we try to maximize what little there is and try and benefit from that? And, people pick me up because I've traveled 80% of the pandemic. I've not actually been in this country. I've been traveling the world, because it's been, sadly for me, I see it as an opportunity to actually see the world in a different light, in a quiet light. And I think if people are sensible, use a bit of common sense, you can, do everything you can to avoid getting infected. Certainly, I'm not the person that goes out of bars, restaurants, clubs, or interacts with people. In fact, Andy and I both had to do tests for this, and we are both of the same opinion that you just minimize the amount of contact you have. And Andy's the first person I've actually physically had in my room since I've returned from Iceland, which is one of the safest countries in the world, and I had to have God knows how many PCR tests to get into there. So putting it into perspective, people still want to ski, and I don't think we should punish them for that, because the resort's open.
Yeah. And I think we can't punish people who want to ski. I think there's an element of people trying to flaunt the rules and bend the rules to enable them to ski, which they shouldn't really be doing, which is very different. But those people who can get to the slopes should be allowed to ski. The lifts are open, so why not ski? Unfortunately for us, it just means we haven't been able to work. The ski school I would normally work for during the winter hasn't really been open. They can only conduct lessons for privates. Here in Kaprun, without tourism, there aren't many ski lessons to be given. Obviously for you guys, without the courses, there's no real ski lessons to be given. I've been spending a lot of time over in Upper Austria, and the ski school there is open, albeit for private lessons, but a teacher's been working an average of 2 hours a day. It's predominantly local kids, but that's because they are very much a local ski school. So they have been impacted, but not as much as we've been impacted, because we literally have been, you cannot work because there is no work.
I think the big thing is that I was talking to some of the hoteliers and people who have the accommodations, and it's they've been hit the hardest because of the constant flex of when they're going to open. You know, we've had this, and this hit and impacted SIA because the government is obviously saying, right, we're going to open on the 20 whatever of December, or we're going to open on the 9th of January, or now it's the 20th of January, now it's the, and they keep moving that goalpost. Now, really, in hindsight, I would have loved to have just said, hey, Paul, you know, that's it for the season. Get yourself away. Nothing's going to happen. Yeah. We're never going to open up to tourism. Go on, have a holiday.
Yeah, and I remember back in November when you guys arrived and you had hundreds. And they arrived, and I think it was literally 2 days later, I drove past one of the accommodations and saw a coach, and I was like,
they're going home. They're going home.
They're going home. And it was like, you couldn't have done any more than you'd done. Because, as you've said, the government kept moving the dates, and we all expected to be open and working, and then we weren't, and everything, literally the rug was pulled from under our feet, let's say.
Yeah. And I think the big problem was, what people need to be aware of, is for companies within Austria and many other places to receive any grant and funding, you can't just sit on your backside and go, COVID, I'll just not work this year. Yeah. You had to be proactively trying to work, proactively booking courses, organising courses, setting things up. Accommodation had to open up on that date. Otherwise, they would have had their funding stopped. So everybody had to assume that it was going to work, it was going to operate. Now, 3 days later, when you're sending 300 people home after just getting 300 people through the door, doing COVID tests, and then having to transport them all back out again, logistically, that is a stress. You know, it was 24 hours a day just to try and make that work. And that stress is continued because the government then pushed the dates and said, oh, no, we'll do it now on December, we'll do it in January, we'll do it. And we didn't have the luxury of just saying, let's just ignore that, what the government's saying, let's just assume the season's not going to go ahead. You're not allowed to do that. Obviously, at this late stage now, it's not going to go ahead. You know, talking to people, tourism is just, it's a definite shutdown until next year.
Yeah. But it's funny because there are still, as you've said, people have still got to work as if it might happen. And there are still promotions and adverts being put out for Easter. Although Easter's, a week or so away, it's not going to happen, but people are still having to act as if it is. We're currently waiting for gastronomy to open on the 27th. It's not going to happen. But those guys have got to start filling their fridges and freezers in case it does happen. Yeah. So, crazy.
And that is a big thing. I mean, obviously, same from our side of, whether it was the gastronomy, we had to get ready for the guests coming in and get food in. You have to open up. You have to get staff in. We had 40 ski trainers here then. Obviously, the background staff as well, all employed. Everybody working flat out to make it work. And in gastronomy, it's worse. The planning, they can't just open one day to the next. They have to. It takes a week.
The food wastage alone is going to hurt the business, isn't it? So
it is. So the pandemic has certainly affected the ski season in Europe in general. I mean, I know sort of Switzerland had that balance of they've also stayed open, but a very grey area. Obviously, there was a lot of rumours and things going around about what was going on there in Switzerland. We had obviously the same situation here with the situation in Austria with Jochberg, the likes of Flachau, etc. So traveling during the COVID time. Well, when it's legally allowed to travel, you can travel. Now, everybody who travelled, in our case with SIA, travelled during a legal corridor. They travelled during a period of time when they were allowed to travel into Austria. So most of our people arrived in the end of October, actually, so going way back. And they've either remained here since, and therefore, they've not left the country. They're now registered here as their fixed residency. But nobody then arrived after that, because at that point, I think there was a corridor in January, actually, for about a week or so, where before there was registration required, etc. And a lot of people were trying their best to get people in during that tiny period to try and make something of the season. Obviously, again, it backfired. It didn't work out. The situation that we had, for example, in Jochberg in Austria, where these people had been here since October, and they were employed or going to be employed by a ski school up there. And the ski school was desperate to get them through the exams to make sure, because they genuinely believed the season was going to be operational and going. That was the information.
We were all told 24th of December the season will start.
And then if not, it would be February, definitely February if not. Definitely. So therefore, again, ski schools needed to staff. They needed staff ready. They couldn't have a situation where, let's say, the busiest period of the year, February, there was no availability of ski instructors, because they were all back in their own countries. They had probably found new jobs, didn't want to leave them for the sake of 2 weeks. So the ski schools were in a difficult position of having to say, right, we do need to have some skeleton staff, or at least a group of people that we know we can use. Now, to fit in with the regulations, and that meant that most of them had to be here before December, where the lockdown was going to be the hard lockdown, if you like. So they all had to come before then. They all had to remain in resort. So that's the situation in Jochberg, for example. They all arrived very early. They were just doing some skiing on their own or with the ski school, for example. And the ski school asked us to come in and do some preparation course to help them towards then sitting their exam with the ski association as well. Now, in the case of the group in Jochberg, who ended up, many of them COVID positive, they obviously, sometime between October and January the 2nd or 3rd, when we turned up to do some training with them, they've obviously, one of them or two of them contracted COVID somewhere, like many millions of other people in the world. It's not a criminal offence to get COVID, but it seems to be to some people. It quickly can spread, as we well know. Fortunately, because SIA had a policy of testing, it meant that when we came in, we identified the fact that people were COVID positive and instantly shut that household down and reported it to the authorities, which is the correct way to do things. Unfortunately, it seems once again that can criminalize you when you actually follow the procedures, because it's a very sensitive time. And look, the masses, they love drama. People love drama. They love it when somebody's, they've got somebody to hit on. And, my advice to everybody is, it's a waste of your energy and your emotions. Put your emotions into your own life than worry about what's going on in somebody else's. But of course, that drama was created through the British mutant strains and stuff, which was impossible because none of them had been in Britain since October. So I don't know how they managed to bring it across. So this story got out of hand a little bit because these many of them, not all young, but some of the young people had managed to get COVID, and as a result, it ended up winding up, I think, some of the Austrians. But it's all put to bed now, and obviously you saw the same situation in Switzerland with a group. We saw the same situation in Flachau with a group of people trying to do training for ski instructor courses.
What was surprising for me is after Jochberg, and as you've kind of touched on there, you guys did pretty much everything to the letter, but then came under a lot of fire from certain areas of the press, let's say. And as you said, it's all been sorted, it's all been put to bed, it's all gone away. I was very surprised then that a few weeks later, there were courses running in Flachau, which then also got closed down because inevitably, when you put a load of ski teachers together, whether they're in separate rooms, whether they're in separate houses, separate hotels, wherever it be, somebody contracted the virus and hey presto, the course gets shut down.
Yeah.
And for me, I was watching that news and reading that news and thinking, how did that even get started, given everything that kicked off with Jochberg?
Yeah.
Because you almost proved that even if you follow the letter of the law and do everything you possibly can, this virus can bite you on the arse no matter what.
Finds a way through, just like water, isn't it? And this is it. I mean, obviously from a point of view is, in Jochberg, what we did was completely legal. Obviously, we're a legally operated concession here in Austria. We're a company, a training company. We can do what we do. It's that's not the problem. And okay, people can scream and shout and say what they want. Look, I wouldn't be sitting here. I'd be locked up in jail now if it was the case, or they would have shut my company down or something, if it wasn't the case that we're completely legal. The issue was that was a favour. I mean, we didn't really want to actually do that course as such. But if we'd actually said, no, we're not going to do it, the government would have turned around and went, why did you turn away those, whatever it is, 35 people and not actually do that work and then ask us for money?
For compensation,
Yeah, because you could have done that.
Yeah.
And that's the problem. And so, we were lucky that we had procedures in place, and the Behörde here, the authorities here, could see that and see that, oh, well done. You've done a really good job. You stopped the spread of it. You isolated immediately, and therefore it didn't actually get, put into the rest of the village. They literally tested the 1,500 people in the village and established that there was no cross-contamination because we hadn't just continued the course and went, some people have got a cold or whatever, and just keep going. But I mean, that was literally in 24 hours. And in the case of, obviously, in Flachau, it was, a similar situation. I mean, you are now quadrupling or 5 times that numbers, sticking them into one hotel. It just takes one person. Yeah. And you're going to end up with that situation. But look, equally, there were courses running in December, when there was a hard lockdown in regions here in Austria, where in Tyrol there were running courses when lifts were completely shut, yet lifts were opened and people, ski trainers, instructors were allowed to go up and actually train for exams. How did that work? It was one rule for one and one rule for another, basically.
I think this was December. Yeah, this is second week of December. I was on a ski tour in Steyr. And I was on an area I'd never been to before. And apparently there is a hotel that owns the ski infrastructure and the ski school. And there was a T-bar run open. And we turned up to go touring. And I said, that lift's open. And we looked over and I was like, that's a training. That's a ski instructor training. You could see that the people at the front of the groups, they weren't ski teachers. They were Ausbildners. They were coaches. And I was like, I swear that is an Anwärter group. And we went up and we toured up and we skied down. And then we got to the car park and there was someone in a uniform and I asked what was happening and he said, it's an Anwärter course. And I was like, how? Now, the fact is that the Anwärter course was staying in the hotel. The hotel owned the lifts. They also owned the ski school. And therefore the band had come in and was allowed to use the lift and run the course, which was in the middle of a hard lockdown.
Yeah, and that's why how hypocritical it was with Jochberg, for example. People don't get the full story. But then again, if you read, some of the rags here in Austria, some of the papers here in Austria, they're worse than some of the classic ones in England.
In England, yeah.
So, but only, So from the side of the pandemic, obviously it's had a huge effect this season on ski instructor courses, with only very few courses going ahead in places. Switzerland have had the odd one or two, Spain sort of squeezed some through, Austria squeezed a few people through. But in general, it wouldn't have been the same atmosphere or the same feeling of what a normal ski instructor course is, let's say with SIA. Anybody who did bother to find a way through hasn't had really the full experience of what ski training should be.
For the courses, they wouldn't have had the experience, but also from our side as ski teachers in a village, we need tourists. We've missed the tourists, not necessarily because we've missed work and we've lost out on money, but we're in this business. A lot of us are in this business because we like to be with people. We like to teach people. We like to communicate and mix with people and go to après with them. And we've had nobody all winter. And again, Capron without tourists is pretty much empty. And if you'd come on a course and it had been empty, it wouldn't have been the same atmosphere. And it's not been the same atmosphere. You walk through the streets now, you don't see anybody. We should have people everywhere at the moment. And that's been the same in the other areas of Austria that I've been.
It's a ghost town everywhere, and that's the situation. I think a lot of people, there's a combination of people who book our courses. We have the sort of people 40s, 50s, 60s who are very, very committed. And yeah, they like a little bit of après, but at the same time, a lot of their focus is in the technical skiing. They really want to improve to their maximum of their ability. And then obviously you get the sort of 18 to 20 odd year old who wants to do that, wants to improve, but at the same time, they're coming because they know of the SIA brand, they know the name, they know that it creates some of the best après, the best ski atmosphere that can possibly be had, and snowboard obviously as well. So that's missing this year, no matter what.
There's a big social aspect. There's definitely a big social aspect. And I think a lot of the time that also adds and makes the courses.
Yeah.
Because my experience, and a lot of people who follow Snow Camp Europe, and a lot of people who I teach, they know when I came back, I did an SIA course. And I looked at lots of different courses. And the reason I picked the SIA was not just for the skiing, it was for the social aspect. Because I wanted to have a good time.
Yeah, of course, and there's nothing wrong with that. And that's where it comes onto these mental health issues that, when I was speaking to Abby Butcher from The Telegraph, she was very keen to make sure people are aware that, yes, there's a pandemic, and yes, it's an absolutely devastating situation around the world of how many people have been affected and died, and, it's just horrendous. But at the same time, the mental health of these, not just the 18-year-olds, if you like, but right the way through, people who are used to company will find it difficult. Now, I don't teach very often because I don't like people, so it's different for me, Andy. I like the idea of COVID's been like my holiday.
Yeah, you quite liked it.
It's like great.
Self-isolation 101 by Paul Simpson.
So from my side, it's been great. But I get it. I get what Abby was saying, that, it's really stifled the development of, let's say, the average, late teenager, early adult phase, because it's changed their perspective of everything, and that lack of connection they've had with people, and the feeling that they're almost criminalized if they do have a connection with somebody is putting them under huge pressure, and that's why we hoped our course in October, November could have went ahead for those 300 plus people, because we would have contained it. We did test everybody. We would have regularly tested them to make sure that they could socialize safely and still operate that course. But of course, the hotels were shut down, and as a result, if the hotels are shut, there's nowhere to stay. So
and then the lifts followed, didn't they? Yeah. But I think the thing is, the knock-on effect is next year we are going to have to adapt and change our ways of working and our ways of how we interact with each other in hotel rooms, how we interact with each other in the lobbies, après ski, if there is any après ski next year. Again, big grey area on what next year or next winter, let's say, will hold. But do you believe that? Because I must be just an optimist, because I just think this vaccine's going to go about, and within 6 months you're going to see people go, what? COVID what? Can't even remember. I would hope that is the fact, because everybody who knows me knows I like a bit of après ski, but I think there will be a knock-on effect that there will still be some restrictions next winter. I don't see masks in lifts going away. I can't see that's going away. It's going to almost become the norm. And what happened at the beginning, wearing a neck tube or a buff became the norm, and then we had the blue masks, it became a norm, and now we've got the FFP2s, which has become a norm. Which, by the way, cost me a fortune. Because who's going to refund all the government's costs for those? Because at the end of the day, we started with the buffs. So quick, get buffs. Of course, buffs were sold out everywhere in the world. Yep. So you had to push yourself to the front of the queue and buy 2,000 buffs. Buy 2,000 buffs quick. Oh, buffs are no good now. Yep. Okay, get these masks. Blue masks. Got the masks. Brand them. No, they're no good. Branded the masks. That was a waste of money. Right, quick, get FFP2 masks. There you are. There's 6,000-7,000 euros gone. It's just ridiculous. But I'm different. I think that
when you get through the 50s plus are vaccinated and even 40s plus are vaccinated, and God, the UK is doing a good job, then the situation, will be more like a normal flu. And yeah, you're still going to see people catching COVID, but I think by that stage, I'm very optimistic that people forget quickly. And it will change. It'll change for next year, definitely. And I'm genuinely believing that we're going to be, there might be a few little things, I mean, obviously this thing about a travel passport of some sort, which is, it's a sensitive area. I can understand people saying who don't want, I was speaking to one of my trainers the other day who doesn't really want to get vaccinated, but I was saying to him, unfortunately, if you want to be on the team,
you're going to have to get
going
vaccinated.
to Argentina, then we've got to tick every box now, assuming that will be one of the loopholes. So for Argentina, when I spoke to the authorities there and spoke to the hotel and the rental car companies, etc., and the ski resort, they thought that they would be able to open to international tourism because they're going to be bringing flights in actually from Brazil. Now, if they're bringing in flights from Brazil that are vaccinated, they have to be vaccinated. They said, look, it's highly likely then that they're going to allow Americans, Canadians, UK, Europe in as well, as long as you can prove you've either had COVID or you're vaccinated. And I know that's difficult for people who don't want the vaccine. I get that. But unfortunately, it's COVID. It's how the world is. Now, I've just been 6 weeks in Iceland, which is a country that doesn't have COVID at the minute, and it's such a breath of fresh air because you go there, you have to go through some red tape to get there. Not now, by the way. The border's completely open in Iceland. Cool. As long as you are vaccinated. You don't need to do anything except produce a vaccination certificate. But normally you did have to do some bits and pieces. But once you're there, of course, you forget about COVID because
you're back to normal.
You're back to normal. And that normality is it's interesting. It's like it's a novel thing.
It's probably quite refreshing, I would expect.
Well, it is. And then of course we delayed flying back a few times, and then we ended up coming back. And we were delaying because we wanted to catch the volcano because the earthquakes were getting stronger and stronger. You could feel them when you were in Iceland. We got shook out of bed a few times, and we were waiting for this.
Are you sure that was an earthquake?
Well, this volcano we were waiting to erupt, and of course we flew back, and then I think yesterday or whatever it erupted.
So you missed it.
So I missed it, but I'm positive that things are going to be completely different and I think the date for the big changes will be the first week of October, end of September, when they know it's impossible for people to have a summer holiday. It's all done. And everybody's in that dead period between summer and winter. Yeah. Great time to say, oh, by the way, everything's normal. You know what I mean? Because last year they did it too early, if you remember. They sort of opened a bit back up in summer. Yeah, and it created a spike then in October, November. Yep. Whereas that was the danger. They really needed to, because I remember going to Südtirol in Italy. And God, we were shocked because we travelled to a lot of places throughout the world and to places like the Faroe Islands, for example, which is again really quiet, nobody there. But then we went to Südtirol thinking, oh, we'll do that when it's quiet. Jesus Christ, Andy.
Packed.
We literally spent 3 days and come home. Because I just went, I can't be doing this.
I remember hearing about this.
There were so many Germans, it was just absolutely packed.
I'm going back to Capron, there's too many people.
Yes. Yeah. And I went back to Capron because there was too many people. It was a nightmare. So I think they'll try and do everything to force staycations, because obviously the UK will do that because he's a greedy little whatever. For sure. He's going to go, oh, don't fly anywhere. Keep the money in the UK. Bollocks. Get yourself anywhere you want. Anywhere you can get to. Get yourself away if you can get away. But he's going to say that just for the financial point of view and to make things look worse than they are. That's just this scaremongering tactic. If they allowed people to have some maturity about this and realize that, look, I've had the vaccine, 4 weeks since I've had the vaccine, I'm healthy. Can I not fly to, I don't know, Ibiza or Mallorca or whatever it is, or Greece or wherever is open? Mm-hmm. Yeah, of course. Why not? That's how it should be. So coming around, and I know we've waffled on to 30 minutes here, but talking about the ski industry and the ski instructor courses, yes, it's been crap everywhere, but it'll bounce back. It'll rebound back, and it'll rebound back hard, because I know that from the amount of bookings we have for next year has already doubled what we've ever had by this period in March. Argentina is 2.5 times more booked than it normally is in July. Austria is already double what it would normally be by March. So people are absolutely itching.
Yeah, people are desperate to come. And again, for me, I've got more bookings at this time of year for next winter than I would normally have. And people are looking at, and my customers are very different to SIA customers. Mine are tourists. They're just holiday makers. But they're all looking at doing 2 trips next year because they've missed this year. They've had a refund. Instead of going and spending it on garden furniture, they're actually saying, right, we're gonna rebook a ski holiday now, and with the money we'd saved for the next ski holiday, we're gonna book a second ski holiday. So it is gonna bounce back, although unlike Paul, I think there will still be some restrictions.
Maybe.
But we can't agree on everything.
Well, it goes, yeah. I mean, I wouldn't notice because I never go to a bar in Capron or a restaurant, so nobody knows who I am. So we'll come back to you again with our next topic. God knows what it's going to be, but thank you for listening to us, and we'll see you again.
Yeah, see you in the next one. Bye for now.
Bye.